So this drone video or footage is from 2024, and it is of a field, one of a few fields that we still own between Alicia, Arkansas and Jonesboro, Arkansas. The area you see right there underwater in the center is actually a plantable area. It just sometimes the water gets up high. It is precision leveled in about 5 different plots of varying sizes and has been commercially row crop farmed for decades. I remember as a kid growing up in the 80s, it was not precision leveled, and there were areas of kind of sandy area and boggy area where we got tractors stuck and all this kind of stuff. The construction you kind of see there, the blacktop is a new section of road the Arkansas Department of Transportation has put in, essentially moving the highway slightly north, because they put in 2 new bridges you'll see in a little bit, and to connect the 2 bridges they put in some new pavement. So there's the new bridge, and the old bridge was south of that a little bit. It's already been removed and everything. You see the town of Alicia there at the top left. From the creek that you see here in the center, sweeping over to the left, to the creek now entering on the right, you can tell it's been dredged. There at the very, very front, between the bridges, is our field, and then it runs north of the highway. We'll fly the circuit. We'll fly basically the boundary here. It's about 140 acres, and starting in 2026, this is not going to be row cropped anymore. My goal, I have taken it out of the lease. We've been renting it along the rest of the fields to a local farmer, and before that a different local farmer after my parents retired from farming. So they had been farming it and then leasing it out along with the rest of them. I have now taken this 140 acres out of the field, or out of the lease, and my primary goal, first and foremost, is that it never be poisoned again, other than drift coming from the other fields, and I'm going to try to find ways to even mitigate that. So I want it to never be poisoned again. I prefer very little disturbance. It's not going to be like dissed, and tilled up and all that kind of stuff multiple times a year. I'm not going to say there's going to be no disturbance. There may actually be some significant disturbance at some point, as I may put in one or more or a series of ponds of some kind, and obviously that's going to have to be dug out. But we've got those creeks. You got a bit of a tree line here. You got a little bit of a field on the right hand side, the eastern side. I think I see some beehives in there. Actually, that looks like bales, round bales of hay. And we're just kind of flying up the property line. The road between the field and the trees is essentially the agreed upon land, the line. And although I do have a feeler out to a surveyor, and I'm hoping to get it professionally surveyed again to really be sure exactly where the property lines are. So here we're only about halfway down the field. That's kind of a road between 2 of the plots that bisects it. So what you're looking at there is about half of the field. And we sweep back. Here's the other half or so. It's about a mile long from end to end. And at this point you see there's nothing between this field on the left and the field on the right and the field on the north side when we get up there as a windbreak for any kind of chemical drift. So one of the big efforts is going to be putting in anything I can that will grow up tall, not completely, it needs to be dense, but it needs to be about 60-75% permeable to wind. probably eventually multiple layers, multiple lines of some kind of windbreak here. It may be things like Miscanthus gigantus, Arundodonax, bamboo, trees, shrubs, different kinds of fence line. So this road is pretty much the northern property line, and you see the well. We're going to get down there close to the well. I believe it's about a 12-inch casing. And again, this is from 2024. And talking to the farmer, I finally was able to get a hold of him. It does not do underground irrigation. It just does a pond. And it does work, but my understanding from him is that it's not, quote, a good well, meaning it's probably not pumping a lot. Now, that may be because the water table has dropped. It could be because the pump is wore out, or both. So the last year or two, they have primarily pulled water out of the creeks on one side or the other. What we call it a relift. It goes out in the creek and it just kind of pumps water from there into a pipe. That one that we're looking at is not ours. It's not on our land, but it's an example, and we'll see ours here in a little bit. So they're using creek water, and while that well may not, to his standard, be very good for rice farming, meaning the ability to completely flood 130 acres under 2 to 4 inches of water. I mean, that's a lot of water. It probably would be more than fine if the water quality is acceptable for non-flood irrigation, possibly even the whole thing, the whole field, especially in zones or sectors. I'm sure that it would be more than enough for, a couple of residences. This little strip you see here between the creek and the rest of it is also precision leveled, but it is a couple of feet, 3-4 feet lower than the bigger areas. So need to get it surveyed. I need to somehow or another get that well going, put some kind of a electric or motor on it, or a tractor or something, get it going, flush it out a little bit, and get a sample and see what the water quality is, and have it tested both for household and as irrigation water, because it's two different tests. See what we got to work with as far as water quality. If it's okay for irrigation, depending on what their standards are, but not for household use, then that's one thing. Might be able to be filtered. But, our four sources of water, especially for household, is going to be either that well or somehow or another connect into the rural water system. Those are the legal ways of doing it. There's also potentially rainwater, which is not technically legal in Arkansas. And you see that wellhead there, the relift pumps to that and then pumps all the way across to the other side of the field. And that's how he's been flooding this field. Or the creek water. Now, the creek water, we don't know what all's in that. There's no idea what all is in that creek water. And it changes throughout the year because people are spraying or fertilizing, whatever. It gets dredged, so which really I don't like. I hate dredging because all it does is it runs the water away as fast as possible, and then that's why people need to irrigate. If we captured the water and held it, then we wouldn't need it. So here's Field Road, and on the right-hand side, that area has not been actually farmed for any kind of a crop for years. And I'm not sure if that's because it tends to flood. I think at one point there may have been that part of it up front that had been declared a wetland. When I look at the NRCS or the FSA documentation, I see on it no wetland. So at some point I need to go up to the office and talk to them, say, is there any portion of this field, this 140 something acres, that is currently wetland? Because if it is, it's protected. I think I can still do some things with that. The regeneration that I want to do is going to be far above and beyond what NRCS and FSA are doing. So part of the reason why I don't want it to be declared a wetland is so that I can do more regeneration, more detailed, more extensive, possibly more exotic, without them messing with me and telling me I can't do it. Of course, the holdup right now is me just being able to be there because I've got my other property I'm still working on, and I've been caring for my parents, which keeps me from doing very much. But eventually, my goal is to, and I may have to repeat the video to have enough time. Eventually, my goal is to put in a market garden, essentially an experimental station where I experiment with a whole bunch of different. Hang on a second. Yeah, we're going to repeat the video so that I can talk more. Like I said, put in a bit of a market garden, an experimental station. I hope to divide some areas of that field off, maybe half-acre, plots or something of that, maybe at 1 acre plots, and do different kinds of regenerative agriculture, just to gain experience, maybe to allow some other people to gain some experience, and just to put them side by side, because there are so many different techniques and ways of market gardening, home gardening, food forests, Miyawaki, permaculture, different things like this. Helen Athauer version, that I think it would be interesting to have like half an acre plots of each side by side in one particular place on one particular soil type starting, and then of course maybe at least one, if not multiple 1 acre plots that's just fenced off and nothing at all is done to, and see what would the natural succession in this area on this land be. So if I did nothing, what would it look like, in a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and then have these other regenerative type techniques also there side by side. Maybe a little bit of grazing with different kinds of animals. Of course, to do a lot of that, number one, I've got to be there, and number two, I need people. So that's where part of the educational kind of space and maybe a little bit of market garden or whatever will come in. It might, word might get out, and those who are interested might gravitate there, come and look. So rather than me necessarily going out and doing a bunch of speaking and trying to drum up support, take more of a build it and they will come type attitude and see what happens. With that number of people and the number of people that would need to be there full time to manage some of this, we may carve out, some little homestead kind of areas or some kind of living arrangements, so that those who are truly interested, and especially if they're not from the immediate area, within a couple of miles, can be there and be housed. Not necessarily an intentional community, not really a town. And of course it needs to be done with all the proper legal framework and protections, so that I don't get into a squatter type thing where somebody comes in and all gung-ho, and then they decide it's too much work, but they don't want to leave either, and you can't get them off the property. So, I want people that want to do this and are really 100% invested in it, in the different processes, are very learning-oriented, very autodidact. And part of the other thing is, I want to actually grow food, healthy food for myself, for what family I still have and, communicate with and interact with, and also the town. That's a town of about maybe 100 to 200 people. As you can see, there's millions of acres of farmland all around that town. I think Swifton's 5 miles away to the south, Walnut Ridge and Hoxie's about 12 to 15 miles to the north, Jonesboro's about 20 to the east. So it's 5 to 20, 25 miles in any direction to the nearest grocery store. We've got millions and millions of acres of farmland with, quote, farmers and producers who, quote, feed the world, and none of them can go more than a week to maybe a month without going to a grocery store to get something to eat. So with all this farmland, and they're feeding the world, but they don't even feed themselves and their own family. And I want to change that. I want to use what has been put in my charge to see what we can do. And I'm doing this field because it is right outside of Alicia. It's not the smallest field we have, It's a decent size. It has a little bit of protection from those creeks and stuff like that. It's also on the side towards Jonesboro. So for those who might be willing to drive 20 miles one way for, agritourism kind of thing, education, whatever, it's not too far away. It's about within walking or bicycle distance from Alicia. So I want to feed myself. I want to feed my family. And I would like to be able to make a significant difference in providing healthy food and how to grow healthy food and what healthy food is to the community I grew up in and any overflow maybe to Jonesboro. That's it. Because trying to feed the world, using that phrase, feed the world, all that really does is make the problem so big that no one person, no one farmer, unless they're a multinational industrial corporation with thousands and thousands and thousands of acres, can make a dent in it. I mean, I've got family that still farm conventionally, and there's part of me that says, you say you feed the world. Is there a single person on this planet that you could point to their plate and point to something that you grew? No. Because everything they grow, closest thing that might be their whole might be a grain of rice. Maybe. But as far as wheat, it's going to be turned into flour. You can't pick out a wheat berry that they grew. Soybean. No, nobody eats whole soybeans. It's going to be in tofu. It's going to be soybean oil. It's going to be soybean meal. You cannot pick to a soybean that they grew that's on somebody's plate. So to me, that's not food. That's industrial feedstock. It is maybe an ingredient, as part of a meal or an oil or something like that. But to me, that's not food. I want to be able to grow things that somebody comes and buys, or they sit down at my table and they can point to a leaf of lettuce, or they can point to a slice of a butternut squash, or a slice of a tomato, or whatever, and be able to, and an egg, this came from David's farm. Or I can point to it and say, I grew that, I produced that, that is food. Even if it's a pie, the quote pumpkin, which is actually a squash, the puree came from my farm. Things of that nature. So this is a project that I don't know how far I'll go. I mean, I'm 59. I'll be 60 this year. I don't know how much time I've got in years or in physical labor, and I don't absolutely know when I'm really going to be able to get to work on it, other than planning and some stuff like that, getting it out of the lease. I've taken a couple of steps there, no land moving, earth moving, or anything of that nature. But until my schedule is completely freed up, I don't know when I'm going to be able to be on the land actually doing the work. And I've still got a 6.5 acre property, really 2 counties away. So this is Lawrence County, my other one's in Poinsett County. They're about 50 miles between them, 30 to 50 miles between them, depending on which direction you go, that I also need to work on. I'm 4 or 5 years behind on that property, and I don't plan on abandoning it. In fact, that's part of the education part of it, because this is flat land, conventional row crop ag land that we're regenerating and see what we can do with on a large scale. And the other is on the ridge, totally wooded, completely different soil, completely different history, and see what we can do there and kind of compare and contrast efforts between the two. And it's going to need somebody there as well, and I'll be bouncing back and forth. But haven't even fully figured out what I'm going to name this. I think I'm going to stick with Hippocrates Garden, and this may be Hippocrates Garden Alicia East or something of that nature, so that there'll be an umbrella that all my efforts are under, whether it's a community garden, whether it's my ridge garden, whether it's this property, and they'll all be under that umbrella, but with just different sites. If you're interested in any kind of regenerative, holistic, reparative farming and gardening, and you're in the Northeast Arkansas area or be coming through here, get a hold of me, and I will be looking for experts. I will be looking for subject matter experts on a great many topics, maybe some equipment, some things like that. I will not be using poisons. I will not be disturbing the soil simply for the sake of disturbing the soil. We'll be doing food forest. We'll be doing permaculture. We'll be doing anything that creates life. Our answer to any problem is not going to be death. It's not going to be poisons. It's not going to be tillage. Our answer to every problem is going to be add life. The answer is to add life. If you're interested, let me know.